And this one, my notes just fell. Hold on. My notes fell. Okay. So this one is something I'm dealing with as we speak. And so what is confusion, by the way? And I'm sure you experience it many times where you are either trying to make a decision between two things or three things or multiple things, multiple directions in your life or business or relationships, etc. And it might be also just so much information coming in that you're trying to reconcile it and make sense of all of it. So that can feel like a sense of confusion. And I also see it in the space of obviously indecision, right? Not being able to make those solid decisions that are going to move you forward. And, you know, confusion for me is like sitting on the fence, right? It's like you're not going either one way or the other. And if you've ever sat on a fence, it usually hurts. So if you're here live, make sure to say hello in the chats. And if you're on the replay, hit #replay so I can say hello to you back. And if you get some value out of this, please share this and let other people know and get aware of what's really going on internally when these type of things show up. And my job is to just educate and mentor people through their own self-leadership and their own I call it, you know, self-management for that matter. So even just this morning, I was getting information, and there's a lot of information going on around about what's happening in the world, and I started to feel that sense of confusion. And also, I don't know if anyone has taken the quiz. I'll put the link in the chat or in the post here, where you can take the quiz for finding out what your egoic archetype is. I talk about this a lot, and there's 4 egoic archetypes I've determined that house the 14 ego tricks, and confusion is one of those tricks. It's one of those things that our egoic self likes to use to keep us protected. Because if you're confused, you basically don't take action a lot of times, or you don't move forward, or you stay in the spin instead of like trusting yourself and to just move to the next step. And to kind of flow down that river. And so feel free to take that quiz. I put the link on the screen here, bravemasters.com/quiz. And the reason I share that is the more that we are self-aware, the thing is, the power is, although I was going through this moment of confusion, I'm also hyper aware that this is how my egoic self, my protector, is trying to keep me in the certainty, keep me in familiar, keep me in the safety that the illusion of life provides, right? Or the ego provides. And so what do we do when confusion sets in? Number one of the things that I do pretty quickly as I can, is to reconnect to the now. So the confusion is kind of the what ifs and if I go left, if I go right, if I'm, and then it's just this outside, these narratives that are controlling my mind and my emotions. Remember, our thoughts lead to our emotions and our beliefs. And so basically, if you're believing the thoughts you're having, then therefore you've set up your belief system. And so when we reconnect to the now, then we can just kind of center ourselves and step into what we know, right? I'm always wanting to get back to what is it that's true for me in the moment. And so sometimes we can just choose a couple of ideas and thoughts around, what do I know to be true? What do I know to be about this moment, versus like all of the things that could happen in the next moment, or the things that have happened in the past, or all of that starts to play out. And so if you're reconnecting to the now, obviously you can do that by just centering yourself, like taking a breath. Or, for me, I sometimes meditate if I have time to do that. It's so funny. I have my Apple Watch, right? And so there's a breath app, and you can click the breath app, and it literally just helps you breathe for like a minute or something. So that alone just brings you back to center and calms your mind down, because now you're focused in on body, right? And so that's one way to do it. Just reconnect to the now, reconnect to what you know is true, what you know is okay, and to kind of quiet the chatter and the spin and the crazy craziness of it all, the confusion. And so ultimately then, we move to the next step, which is to identify the narrative that is playing out on both sides of the equation. And so if you're in, for instance, I just talked to someone recently where they're trying to make a decision, and they have, it's like, if I go this way, then this might happen, or I have to experience this and I'm resisting this. And if I go this way, the other direction, then I have to experience that, right? It's this and that, right? It's that, it's that back and forth. And the first step though is to, of course, identify the narratives. What is it that you're saying is going to happen, right? It's like the future tripping that I talk about when we fear something or we're resisting something. And so identifying what those conversations are, and then, on both sides of the equation will give you a better view of what really is creating the confusion, right? And so, and if sometimes I think confusion can come from not misinformation, but lack of information, lack of the knowing or the knowledge. And we're always looking outside of ourselves for the answers. And I think we do have a really strong, system at our disposal called our bodies, our human bodies, and they allow us to actually feel into what's right for us. And at any given moment. So those instincts, those intuitions, those kind of like the gut reaction, right? And when we tap into that knowledge, that it's like that motherboard, then we can actually start to make decisions. And sometimes I think we assume we have to make a decision that's like all or nothing. And what if there's just a small step in between that can move us to the next decision? Right. So sometimes it's just one little decision at a time. I know you've probably heard this. Don't try to eat the whole elephant at once, only, eat the elephant one bite at a time. That's just some phrase called, if something's really big and it feels really big, then you just break it down into smaller bites, right? Smaller steps. And so number two, again, step two is to identify the narrative on both sides of the equation that you're looking at, that you're confused by. And if confusion is lack of information or lack of knowing from, that standpoint, then sometimes it's maybe asking questions or asking for help or getting perspectives from different sources. So that's another way to also add. Now, if that adds more confusion, then again, we need to look internally and go, what is it that if I choose to believe this, or if I choose to take action in this direction, what is it that I'm afraid of will happen? What is it that I don't want to experience? And sometimes it may be, if I go this way, I don't want to experience failure. If I go that way, I don't want to, experience rejection, so a lot of times we sit in the middle of in the spin and the confusion of stuff, because there's like these tethers, and it feels like a puppet, like we're attached to all these tethers, and these strings are attached whenever we go either direction. And those strings is something we create. And so we got to identify the narrative so that we can identify the strings that are being puppeteered and in our own self, right? By our ego. Our ego likes to keep us in control. It likes to keep us in those attachments, because then it knows what to do with it. There's a familiarity around it. And yet it also hijacks our momentum forward. So, and then the final step I would say is number 3, which is surrender to what you know. And so this one takes practice for sure. And it's like, once you know what you're really fighting, then you can come back to, again, center and like really surrender to what you know. Again, know what it's like. There is something, and sometimes it's just unconscious, and sometimes it's hidden from your view in some way. And so this, for me, it requires, usually a meditation or something, some quiet space, some quiet time, because I just hear the noise otherwise, and it's overwhelming. And, and then the realist archetype kicks in, and then my secondary is the rebel, and my rebel kicks in, and I get frustrated, and my realist is all about trying to fix it and trying to figure it out, and trying to, navigate and mitigate risk and have control over it. And so, like I said, take the quiz, find out what your go-to egoic behavior is, because then you can outsmart the ego. That's the exciting part of understanding yourself even better. And so in order to do step 3, to surrender to what you know, you have to like quiet the egoic behavior. You got to recognize what the behaviors are. And like I said, there's like 14 ego tricks that I've identified so far. And then there's some, subsets of those. And so the opportunity is to recognize when that signal is going off, that it's your false self. It's not your true self. And the surrender to what you know belongs in that true self arena. And so the way to get there is to practice quieting that chatter, quieting that egoic behavior, right? Calming that down, and ultimately like getting present in the now and knowing what's true for you in the moment, right? It's interesting because, it's like, what's true for us now may not be true for us in a year or, in 2 years, but it's like, we have to live in the moment based on what we know in the moment. And then therefore, as we grow and expand our consciousness and our awareness, then we start to, obviously we can make new decisions. And so that's the process that I see for now. Again, I was dealing with this literally right before this video, and then I also was hearing it with some conversations that I was having over the last week with other individuals that are really struggling to make some decisions for themselves. And I was literally observing. It's kind of that yo-yo effect that goes on when we can't can't see what's underneath, right? Those ego tricks, which is the attachments, which are the tethers that are puppeteering us, right, all the time. So number 1, reconnect to the now. Number 2, identify the narratives on both sides of your equation, like whatever you're confused in, right? Like really unpack the narratives so you can see the stories going on. And then number 3, surrender to what you know. Like, I know this to be true for me right now. And just like, when you ask that question and you just answer that question very simplistically, it isn't complicated, and it's not even something that will take you much time. It's like you just have to allow yourself. You have to surrender to that and allow the answers to come through you. And then you might even surprise yourself how calm the confusion gets, right? So I hope this was helpful. Just a little more insight into this conversation around confusion, because I feel like it's something that's rampant right now. We're dealing with a lot of hard decisions and adversities and information coming at us. And again, I always talk about curate the information that you receive and make sure that you're being fed the things that really you feel good or you feel like is right. And so, and that's all getting out of your head and dropping down into your gut, right? Your intuition and instincts. So, and again, that takes practice to learn, practice to implement, and that's what I'm here for. We're shifting the dial, right? Just 1 degree on that dial can absolutely change the quality of your life and the way that you lead yourself and others. So that's my intention. And so please take a look at the quiz. It's free information. It's got a free training little tutorial video, and you can download all the ego tricks and also my detachment method, which helps to unpack some of these narratives that I'm talking about. And that's all for you. So check it out. And I would love to know what you find out about you, if you're willing to share. And until later, let's go get our brave on. Hi, Shannon. I see you. Thank you so much. Right at the last minute. All right. Talk to you guys soon. Thanks.